Hello and welcome to the STR Intel podcast. I'm your host, Philip Wilburn, along with my co-host, Mr. Killian Gordon.
Happy Friday, everyone.
And we are in Cascade today.
Yeah, we're at a beautiful property we've nicknamed Adventure Cabin. It's a nice 4-bedroom home up here in the Cascade 24 area. The perfect cabin getaway experience.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful day. I don't know if we can say that for very long. It's probably going to get really hot, but
It's going to hit 95, maybe triple digits out here.
So what are we talking about today? We're talking about how to communicate to your guests. And we've talked about this a little bit in some of our other episodes, but I really want to just dive into this, and we can start with, of course, the what you're communicating to the guest. And I think we've gone into that a little bit when we were talking about how to set up a house and get it ready.
And a little bit about guest expectations, because that initial messaging, those initial conversations with the guest before they even check in is going to set either a good expectation or a bad expectation.
Yeah, and then maybe we can give some examples of how to regularly communicate with your guests, not just via email or text, but on the phone. How do you need to be speaking to them? And then maybe what to do if something goes wrong, or you've got an angry guest. Something goes wrong and a guest is upset. We can maybe talk about that too, and maybe give some scenarios for that.
Do you think you can over-communicate with a guest?
Absolutely. And I'd say if it's via phone, probably not. If you're calling them and talking to them, or it's in person, I'd say that's pretty hard to do. But if you're sending them a ton of emails and text messages leading up to their stay, yes, you can blow somebody up where all the relevant information is lost in the shuffle of everything, meaning their check-in instructions, their door code. Like, you send them 5 or 6 emails before they've ever checked in. It's like they're scrolling through their email trying to find which one's the check-in instruction. It just makes things confusing.
Absolutely. And then the medium of the conversation, sometimes it might be best to give them all the information they need in an initial email, and then maybe your second contact with them is just a follow-up, and it could even be an automated text message just to check in with them to see if they made it into the house okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing to preference is the communication doesn't necessarily begin when their stay begins. It begins during booking confirmation, when they're looking to inquire, or when they're looking to book. That's when the communication starts. And even if someone sends an inquiry, it's reaching out, hey, do you have any questions? Because people are so quick to move on. If you don't have a response, or they have some initial questions they need asked, and you don't get to them in time, they're going to move on to the next property. They're not going to book it.
So this would be big for people who don't do Insta booking. So people who they have Insta booking turned off, and they're communicating with all their guests prior to booking to be able to... Well, if you're going to communicate with your guests prior to booking in terms of like an instant booking, how you handle them and how quickly you handle them and how quickly you work with them to accomplish that booking is going to be the expectation set from the very beginning on how well how good a communication do you have with when they book, do they feel reassured that when they actually arrive to the home that there's going to be someone who's attentive and can respond to them?
Mm-hmm. And that everything you're promising them is going to be there. Of course, like, starting off with communications with a guest, I mean, it depends what you're running, right? If you have a couple individual STRs you're managing, it may be easier, and you may have the time to reach out. I always say call and create that relationship and get in contact with them right away. Get them on the phone, because it's so much more personal than an email or even a text message. Call them. But, of course, if you're managing an STR property management company, you've got 10, 15, or even up to 50, 100 rentals. I mean, that may not be realistic to be able to call each and every single one of those. So then it's just looking at what's the method and what's the timing of what you're sending, and it's your service you're providing. So, I mean, I know with us, it's normally, we'll send the initial booking confirmation as soon as someone books, and we give them pretty much a layout of, hey, here's how it's going to work. And we even kind of spell out, here's how the flow of communication is going to be. We're going to send you your check-in instructions 2 days before. That'll have your door code. So kind of just like an outline and laying everything out of, hey, here's how your experience is going to go with us. And yeah, it's also very important not to add too much information or simplify the message as much as possible. Get out any information out of the message that isn't relevant and it's just kind of fluff or.
Yeah, I think that this isn't on the initial communication with the guest prior to check-in or assisting in checking in. It's not the time to dump a bunch of information on them about what you want to share with them in the home. You know, that's what your listing, your writing is for, and that's just they can check in and they can experience the home. But I think some people who are running their homes themselves use the communication with the guest even prior to them booking, almost to be a tour guide, like a remote tour guide of the home. And that's wonderful, and some guests really, really enjoy that. But other guests, especially when people are just a little bit more aware of privacy and distance, somewhat because of COVID still, the communication is for the guests, not for you to impress upon them what they should check out or not check out with the home.
What do you like to see when you go and stay in Airbnb or even a hotel or wherever, when you're traveling and you're staying somewhere? What do you like to see as far as communication?
I enjoy a clean, clear, concise check-in instructions. Really the big rules of the home. Maybe there's an area of the backyard or there's a additional unit on the property. Just your big rules. Like, hey, there may be other guests present. This is check-in. This is check-out. Here's my Wi-Fi username and password. And then maybe the one or two things that are unique about the home, like if the thermostat is in a very difficult place to locate, those types of things. So clean, concise, straight to the point, and informing me about something that might eat up a lot of my time during check-in or during my stay, like finding the Wi-Fi password, finding the thermostat, special instructions if there was a fireplace or something of that nature. So clean, concise, to the point, and educational. And when we go to write up instructions, I go to write up instructions for a listing, I look at it from the perspective of where am I going to get caught up as a guest? Like, am I going to struggle with using this dishwasher because this is an interesting dishwasher? Am I going to struggle with the fireplace because it's it's not as cookie cutter as some gas fireplaces? Those types of things where when the momentum of staying in an Airbnb is going and you're having fun and you're with your family and you're enjoying yourself, you don't want to have to stop for 15 or 20 minutes to try to fumble with something. So having the most pertinent information put in front of me right away is what I try to strive for and what I enjoy seeing from other hosts when I stay in Airbnbs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't take those things like a dishwasher or something that may seem very simple to them, especially if it's a home they lived in, they've used it before. It's like,
absolutely,
oh, they'll figure it out. Don't ever set your guest up to show up and figure out things. Spell it out as clearly as possible for a 3-year-old, because they're not looking to figure out your house. They're looking to enjoy their vacation or their stay, and make those things as easy as possible. What do you think about as far as the method of communication on those kind of instructions? Do you think most people are looking for the in-your-face manual, the sign, the label at the property, on that fireplace, on that dishwasher, or via electronic communication?
That's a tough question. I want to say all of the above. So when we're setting up a home, we may add special signs. We may label different things. We might, we've even gone as far as spending an hour, 2 hours in a home labeling anything that we think might catch a guest up. So for your younger group of travelers, they probably don't need much of anything, either because they don't care about it or because it's irrelevant to them, or they may not use it, or maybe it's just a one-night stay and maybe they're not doing the dish or something simple like that. Mm-hmm. But then, depending on the demographic of travelers, some people when they check into the home, the first thing they're looking for is the welcome board with the Wi-Fi information. Although you may have sent it to them via text message, email, or even spoken to them on the phone, but there's some things that I think that certain people will always be looking for and want. And when we talk about communicating with guests, it's not just in written and verbal communication. It's how you've labeled, I guess written, but it's how you've labeled the home and how you've anticipated for as many different people trying to find the same type of information.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I don't know if I answered that one well, but
yeah, and that's the tricky part too, is like between booking confirmation and the time they actually check in. How often do I need to communicate? What do I need to communicate? And then what form or what platform of communication should it be on? And I think we've talked about this in the past. Normally we'll do platform and email specific communication with the initial confirmation email with the initial instructions. And then as the stay gets closer, and I think, it's even on the day of, we kind of switch to text because people may not have access to their email, and text just seems like it's a lot easier. So those really relevant, specific logistical things like what's the address of the property, any specific driving instructions, kind of you're leading them to the property on the day they're traveling, and you don't really know how they're traveling. They could be driving, we've drove 22 hours from Texas today. Well, that's not that far. That's somewhere else. But, we've been driving for 12 hours with our family. We're showing up late at night. We're exhausted. Or you could have somebody flying in from the airport and doing a quick trip. So, you got to kind of take those things into account. And like you said, it's difficult because there's so many different variables and so many different kinds of travelers that are traveling in different ways. How do you customize this communication experience for them that gives them a great experience at the home?
We've talked about setting up a home to appeal to the widest demographic of people possible. When you think about communication with guests, like most individuals sometimes struggle with communication because we always view communication as what we have to say, and we think of it from our perspective. But when you go and you run a short-term rental, it's very important to consider there's tons of different communication styles. And we even have people, international travelers sometimes, where English isn't their first language. Mm-hmm. So considering that I might want to receive my instructions via email, but you may want to receive your instructions by text, whereas another person may want all their instructions to come through the chat directly through AirBNB's app or whatever it may be. Or
maybe mom is still printing out the Maps quest.
Exactly.
Maybe she's still doing all that, getting that ready.
And then there's the folks that won't look at any of that, and so it needs to be in the house. It needs to be labeled.
Those are tough. The people that just show up on the day of and they haven't read any of the messages and they're calling you, hey, we're at the property. Yes. How do we get in?
Yeah.
I mean, that's they just want it sleek and easy as possible. But
well, that's a big one because when those phone calls come in, I think the knee-jerk reaction, especially if you're running the home, you're turning over it a lot, you have a lot of guest interactions, I think the knee-jerk reaction is kind of like, well, heck, like, why did you look at the check-in information? Did you look at the text? Did you read the listing, etc.? And although there's the old adage, the customer's never wrong, which I somewhat agree with. Like, the customer can be wrong, but it's your job as the host to just engage in that communication in a way that the guest is going to feel, the guest is going to receive it. So you may have hit them with a text message, you may have hit them with an email, you may have made it clear in your creative writing, you may have spoken to them even on the phone prior to them showing up. They may get to the front door and they may have another question about how to get in, or they forgot to write down whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be willing to accept that and receive that from their perspective instead of, why didn't you just look at the check-in instructions, or I thought we've already covered this.
Yeah, and it's this takes more time, but setting up that relationship, and like we were talking about, get a phone call or even just through your initial messaging, kind of figuring out who they are, who they're coming with, why they're traveling, and you almost have this customer bio ready. So if anything does come up, or when it comes to their reservation, their check-in, you kind of have a good idea of how to handle it. What kind of person is this going to be? Is it more likely that they're going to read, they're going to understand, and they're going to be able to get in the home, or, maybe they're going to need a little bit more coaching and a little bit more timing for their experience in getting in the home?
What do you think about this? When you see a lot of people doing their hosting themselves, running their own Airbnb, you mentioned building a relationship with that guest, and I think there's a nuance there where you're not building this relationship with this guest where if the slightest thing goes wrong, you feel guilty and you need to bend over backwards to reimburse or extend an extra night or something of that matter. But building the relationship with a guest in a very professional way where you're there to assist them, you're walking them through what they need to be walked through, you're answering their questions in a timely manner and professionally, and you're understanding who they are and learning about why they're traveling, but at the same time staying in a place of empathy and not necessarily in a place of sympathy where sometimes things can happen or go wrong in a home and they don't always warrant a refund or an extra night. That just is simply not the case. It just doesn't warrant that. And so to build rapport with your guests but also maintain this professional relationship where you don't feel guilty or you don't feel the need to overextend yourself to appease the guest.
Yeah, and let's talk about that too. Like when something goes wrong and it comes down to, okay, this is a hospitality service, I want to compensate them if it's something I've done wrong, if it's poorly done clean or there's clear maintenance items that haven't been done or something where I've messed up on my end. Obviously, I want them to have a great experience, and I want them to feel compensated by that. But I don't think jumping to a refund ever helps, because it's almost like, and I'm the same way. If I ever leave a review for something, for a service, it's only to give them the feedback to get better. I'm not looking for a refund because I don't want to get paid off.
Absolutely,
and that's been my experience with guests too. Jumping straight to a refund. Oh, I'm gonna diffuse this situation, take my money, go away.
And it's also okay to inquire and learn more information about what might be taking place with the guest. I think sometimes guests can reach out and there needs to be more information. Like maybe it's just simply an opportunity to educate your guest on the experience that they could have in the home. I think a good example is they might come into the home and the fireplace doesn't work, and the phone call is, there's a fireplace in the listing. Why doesn't this fireplace work? And the knee-jerk reaction is almost to join in the frustration with the guest,
to meet them at that.
Oh my God,
they're acting emotionally.
I'm sorry the fireplace isn't working, whatnot. But instead, taking that step back, maintaining that professional relationship, asking them what they've already tried to do. And this isn't like accusing them of not reading the instructions or whatnot, but asking them what they've done and then assisting them in getting, for this example, the fireplace started, because it could just come down to they were starting it wrong. And so their impression is, my first night or my night is ruined because I can't use the fireplace because it's broken. But when they get on the phone with the host or the guest communications team, it's really an opportunity to just help them achieve what they were there for, and that's to have a great experience. It doesn't really need to be a point of contention.
Yeah, and like you said, call your guests. If something goes wrong, you cannot, like you said, meeting them at a level of empathy, understanding where they're at in their situation, and showing them that understanding. And you cannot communicate that through text or email or through them reading something you write. Call them and meet them on an emotional level and understand their situation, and then start to shift the conversation to work towards a solution. How do we fix this problem? How do we make sure you have a great stay? And then again, if it's if it's something where you really screwed up and look, I feel bad and I want to fix it, don't jump straight to money. What you could do is offer a bottle of wine, or offer to buy them dinner, or offer something where you have to go out of your way to do extra work to provide it to them. And it's not just, I'm just going to click this button on Airbnb and refund you. Take my money, go away.
Absolutely. It's very dismissive to do that.
And most people don't care about that. Most people are just again, they're on vacation and they're looking to have a great time with their family. And if they're calling you, it's the middle of the summer and it's 84 degrees in the house and it's 9:00 at night, they probably don't care about the money. It's, I just want to be able to sleep comfortably.
And what is your listening of the guests? I think sometimes guests, they're going to let you know things, but it's not necessarily even a complaint or an issue. They were simply just letting you as a host know that this happened, or something happened in the home, or something was a little bit unexpected than what they had expected. And they're not looking for anything. They're not complaining. They just simply wanted to share that.
Yeah.
And it can be tricky if you're a host and you're very emotionally invested in the home, not to react to that. Really, just that statement. Like, sometimes thanking them for letting you know about something that happened in the home is sometimes the best solution.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an opportunity to resolve. But don't create a problem if there's not one. Thank them for the feedback.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that too. Of
Yes.
even guest or host or owners coming at me with, I mean, it was negative feedback, but it was a way to fix the property or make the experience better. And I like almost take, you negative feedback, you can take it the wrong way and not understand, like, no, this is to make a better product. And it may take some change with new processes or a little bit of extra work, and maybe that sometimes is the thing that makes us recluse to it a little bit.
In the last 4 years of Hosty, do you think you've seen any changes in how guests want to be communicated with, or how they communicate? Maybe as in 4 years ago, Airbnb travelers were very reliant on the host, and now Airbnb travelers are becoming more self-sustained, and they want less host engagement. Do you think you see any trends there?
Yeah, and it's tricky too, because I feel like the shared space is kind of shifting away and it's becoming more of the whole space, the whole houses that are available. And then also just the professionalization of STR property management companies coming into play and creating a standard process for many properties, and it's not the individual host. I feel like guest standards have gotten a lot higher. People ask for more specific items at the property. Like, I didn't ever used to get the questions of what's your internet speed. People worried about the Wi-Fi.
How many steps are in the home?
What else? What's another common one that's kind of changed a little bit? But that's definitely one. Of course, you always have the kitchen appliances that people are curious about, but
bed sizes.
I do feel like people's standard has increased, but it's also been the product. Airbnb and short-term rentals is developed and come so far too. I know it was 10 years ago, people were pulling out an air mattress.
Well, you were saying, as things get more standardized and there becomes more and more clear-cut processes, like for all 150 of our homes, it's all the same check-in, check-out process. And we've even had guests reach out to us and like they enjoyed it. They looked for a Hosty home because they know the process. It's not going to change. And when you have a lot of individual hosts, which there's a lot of charm to this too, they've got their own check-in strategy. They've got their own way of welcoming guests. They've got their own way of communicating with the guests. And I think as things become a little bit more streamlined and standardized, guests will also become accustomed to the processes are built out to the guests, but they'll become more accustomed to those processes, and it'll go towards more of the side of hotels. Like, I don't know if I've ever called the front desk of a hotel because the check-in is everything is so straightforward. I can just focus on checking in and out, enjoying my stay, going and visiting the places I wanted to visit during my trip. And I don't need to really rely on a host, and I don't require a lot of communication.
Yeah, and that's tricky with short-term rentals because it's every house is kind of its own custom situation. So if you have a property management company, you got to know how to still have that custom experience, but standardize that information. But I mean, we're seeing all these different technologies starting to pull together. I mean, I see a lot of people using automated messaging and responses, and I think Airbnb may even have this tool now, which could be a good thing to free up your time, but also it's taking away the personal experience with the guest. Smart locks on STRs, I'm seeing those on automated systems all the time now, which before 4 years ago even, especially in Colorado Springs, I was seeing everyone still using the old school, the lockbox.
Absolutely. If you can get rid of a key, get rid of the key.
Yeah, because if a guest takes off with it, well, now you got to go make another copy. And then you got to take it to the property. Just a pain. Avoid it.
Yeah.
Just get a smart lock.
Clear communication.
Yeah, what else? What else about
I think,
communicating
going
with the
back
guest?
to your why, like, why are you communicating with the guest? You had touched on that a little bit before we started, but always coming from a place of why you're doing it, and that's to share an experience with the guest, and that the money's anyone who's running a short-term rental properly knows really the money's going to come. There's some seasonality, but the money's going to come if you're doing it properly. So at the end of the day, it's that guest experience, which only exists with clear communication. So leading with that why, and that why is I'm trying to take care of my guest. I want them to have a good experience, and I want them to enjoy the area that we've provided for them.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I want them to come back too. I want them to love it so much
Absolutely.
that they come back, and that's a good point too. And it's as you're, the communication with the guest does not start at check-in. Of course, we talked about it. It starts at the confirmation when they first inquire, but it also continues after they check out too. I mean, you have to communicate to them the things they need to do if there are things they need to do at checkout. I mean, normally the main things are turn off the lights, lock the door, maybe start the dishwasher. I mean, that's the big ones. And then if you have a bunch of trash, take it out. But even after that, after they've checked out, you have the review system that you have to go through. And if you have it on multiple platforms, you want to make sure if they leave any negative or positive feedback that it's addressed, and if it's negative, if it's something at the property that's a good suggestion that you can fix it, you're communicating that to whoever's going to be purchasing those items and getting it ready. And then also you're just responding back to that guest privately and also publicly too. Because other people are going to be seeing those reviews, and they're going to see your relationship with your guest. And do I want to be one of your guests? Let's see how you treat your guests, especially if something goes wrong and it's a terrible review, and you respond back with the same kind of
Canned response.
Yeah, or you're taking a defensive position, or you're just you're not trying to address the situation. You're just trying to be right in the moment. And other guests or other potential guests that are looking at those reviews are going to see that, that's how they treat their guest.
Yes.
So you almost have to be kind of like an unbiased judge in that regard, in regards to negative reviews.
I had a guy call me he actually doesn't use our service, but we've just stayed in touch for the better part of 2 years. And he recently had a pretty rough guest experience. And it was, unfortunately, really this guest that had caused some issues, a clear-cut case. But the guest was coming after him for things like a refund, and he just wanted my opinion on how we would handle it. And it kind of tied back to that having a good relationship with the guest, but still remaining professional, because he wanted to grill them on the review at the end. He wanted to publicly grill them because he was so adamant about being in the right, which he was. And we talked through it, and it goes back to that professional but relationship, and that's he professionally stated what had taken place, just objectively, non-emotionally, and not even accusatory. Just like, these are the things that happened. These are how we took care of it. And then he just, and then an apology. I'm sorry that your stay wasn't what you expected or everything that it could be. And then you've disclosed to the people looking onto that email that you handled it professionally. You did everything you could to do it. and at the end of the day, all resources were exhausted, really. And you can't please someone who's unpleasable, but you're showing everyone else in the world that's reading those reviews that you handled it professionally. You did everything you could to respond to the issue, and you're not rolling over and getting run over on your reviews, but you're also not on the defense and attacking. You are just stating professionally the things that took place and how they were. That was kind of a
and on top of that, don't apologize and then follow it up with because it is someone else's fault. Because I've seen that time and time again. Like someone gets a double booking. I'm so sorry this happened. It's because Airbnb. You're basically putting the blame on someone else. Just keep it short. Keep your apology and don't give an explanation for it. If you're truly sorry, just be sorry. Leave it short. Just leave the apology and then move on. Apologize, move on to the solution. Here's what I can do for you, and go through and address each one of their points. If they had multiple issues, address each one of their points. Here's the solution, how we're going to solve it line by line. And then again, just remain professional. And a good thing to do is, how do I save this experience, or how do I give them another try with my experience? Offer them another stay at a discounted rate. Look, I messed up this time. Give me another try. Come back. I'll give you a 15-20% discount at your next stay with me.
Well, I think you had a huge gem of knowledge in there, which you just said. Don't say sorry, but, or this happened, but.
It negates everything.
See if you can replace the word but with and approach the situation. I'm sorry this happened, and these are the things that we took care of. But see if when you're responding to guests, and if it's a tricky situation with a guest, try to replace the word but with and it really shifts the conversation from kind of a confrontational one to more of a solution-oriented outcome.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up and sum up what we've talked about, some of the most important things in communicating with your guests is call them any chance you get, develop that relationship, and by calling them as much as possible. And then if issues do arise, of course, call them, get them on the phone. Be empathetic to their situation, and don't just offer them a refund to get them off your back and work towards a solution. You can do that by offering, taking them out to dinner, offering them a gift voucher, a bottle of wine, those type of things. And then just being mindful of that you're not communicating via one channel, meaning not just through email, not just through text. You're communicating on several different channels, knowing that people may not communicate the same way or have access to those same ways of communication. But yeah, that's all we got for today, guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.